Welcome to the Federal Retirement Podcast. My name is David Rates from Benchmark Financial Group, and every month we discuss important topics regarding the retirement planning process for federal employees. This Lunch and Learn series is an interactive discussion where individuals can ask questions. To join these discussions live, you may register by joining our email list at bfgkc.com. We also provide in-person retirement planning and benefit education to federal employees. To learn more about these seminars or to schedule a seminar at your federal agency, go to our website at bfgkc.com and click on seminars. Additionally, if you're looking for assistance to get your retirement on the right track, set up an appointment with us today. You can schedule an appointment online by visiting our website at bfgkc.com or email me at david.rates@bfgkc.com. The contact information is also listed in the description. By setting up a complimentary consultation, we can review your financial situation and develop a plan to meet your financial goals. We hope you enjoyed this topic and hope to connect with you soon.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Rates. My wife Jane and I are the founders of Benchmark Financial Group. Today's topic is important to all federal employees. It's titled Understanding and Generating Retirement Income from Your TSP. Your TSP is a cornerstone of your retirement. It's important to understand the range of options available to you, as well as being able to make the correct option for your personal retirement plan. As federal employees, retirement planning often involves navigating the intricacies of the TSP, which is a component of your retirement savings. TSP offers you that tax-deferred option, much like a 401k does in the private sector. So understanding how to make the most of TSP is so important to securing and maintaining financial security in your retirement. To help you understand the TSP more fully, let me introduce David Rates, President of Benchmark Financial Group, LLC. David?
Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Like we said a second ago, we thought it'd be worthwhile to focus on this topic of how do you actually use TSP in retirement. When you're working full time, your focus tends to be zeroed in on accumulation mode, but eventually the closer and closer you get to the finish line, you start to think, well, what's the most effective way to use this pool of money? And there's just some important bullet points that you want to be aware of because there's a lot of different ways that you can mix and match it. So like we said, feel free to chime in with any questions that come to mind and we'll get going. So it's important to remember that TSP is a major component of your overall gross retirement income. So it's one of the three main legs, being your first pension, the supplement or Social Security, and TSP is the third major piece of the pie. Obviously, you decide how to use it and invest it. So you got a lot of flexibility there. I always say that the pension's pretty mechanized, Social Security and the first supplement are pretty mechanized, where you have a lot of options and flexibility is what you want to do with TSP money in terms of how you want to distribute it, how you want it to be invested. So there's some important bullet points to be aware of, or just items to be aware of when you're marinating on that topic. And obviously it requires planning and attention to maximize that pool of money. So you want to stay up to date on TSP funds, especially through the long haul of retirement. That's definitely something that you want to think about in the back of your mind. And before you get to the formal finish line of retirement, it's worthwhile oftentimes to think about implementing a plan for generating income and have enough money so that you got enough monthly income rolling in, but you also have enough liquid money that's growing, that's available for emergencies or opportunities that crop up. And one thing you don't want to do is just set it and forget it. Oftentimes, if you set it and forget it, things might go the way that you want it to, but we try to emphasize people to take an active role as a retiree in terms of managing that pool of money. So more important bullet points to be aware of with the old TSP fund. So like Dad was saying a second ago, TSP is essentially Uncle Sam's version of a 401k plan. It's one of the biggest 401k type of plans that's out there in existence. You want to know the cards that you're working with in terms of investment options. So the main funds that you want to zero in on, knowing the differences in G, F, C, S, and I. And a lot of folks often use life cycle funds. So you want to have an idea of how those work as well. You want to stay up to date on contributions, whether or not you're doing a percent of salary or a flat amount, how you maximize contributions. And within the last few years, Roth TSP has become a new piece of the pie. So sometimes people are trying to decide, what percentage of my overall contribution should I put in the traditional side versus the Roth side? So we'll touch on that here in a second. All right, generating income from TSP. So TSP has the potential to generate a sizable pool of income, but at the end of the day, it really depends on how much you and your agency contribute during your working years. So if you're maxing out the contributions on an annual basis, that pool of money, there's a strong probability that that pool of money is going to grow a fairly robust clip. But you also want to maximize those contributions. So deciding whether or not you want to do 5% or 10% or maximum contribution, that number can significantly increase your total income as a FERS retiree. So the bigger the pool is, the more income that it's going to generate once you get to the point of turning on income from that pool of TSP savings. And it's not uncommon for folks to have a TSP that can generate just as much money as the FERS pension. So it's a very important piece of the pie that you want to stay on top of and know what your options are for funds, in addition to withdrawal options, and knowing the difference between the funds themselves. So there's a major difference between how G fund works versus C fund, for instance. So, and we'll touch on that here in a second too. Alrighty, so matching. It's good to know that your agency automatically contributes 1%, but as long as you're putting in at least 5%, your agency will match an additional 4%. So the net effect is, as long as you're putting in a 5% contribution, you're going to be getting a 5% match. And we always say the 5% match is like free money, independent of what it's doing in the marketplace. So if at all possible, you at the very least want to get to that 5% match level, because you're leaving free money on the table if you're at a contribution rate lower than 5%. So important bullet point to know in the back of your mind. Going back to that idea of Roth TSP is a relatively new piece of the pie. So oftentimes, like we said a second ago, people are marinating on, should I put money in the traditional side or should I put money in the Roth side? So it's good to know that when it comes to traditional contributions, those go in pre-tax. So every dollar that you put into the traditional side of TSP is reducing your current tax bill to Uncle Sam. Caveat is at a certain point, now the age is 73, the IRS makes you take out what's called a required minimum distribution. So essentially, with the traditional contributions, you're deferring taxation on the money that you're putting into the traditional side to take withdrawals out. You pay taxes at the point that you take withdrawals out at some point down the road. On the flip side, with Roth TSP, those contributions are made with money that you've already paid taxes on. The caveat is that the gain comes out tax-free. So it's really important to know the main differences between the two and how you can leverage those and maximize the growth potential in both sides. So, alrighty, so the Roth TSP, you always want to take into consideration current tax bracket versus future tax bracket. Like ideally, in terms of leveraging a Roth, oftentimes you want to fund that like earlier on in your working years. So when you think about your earning potential as like half of a bell curve, if you fund a Roth earlier on and then have this huge chunk of gain that you take out after age 59 and a half, that's one of the best ways to maximize it. But at the same time, just having a pool of Roth savings is at any point is an important variable to have in your overall portfolio. Again, contributions into the Roth TSP are made with after-tax money, and the gains come out tax-free the longer of 5 years or age 59 and a half. So if you funded it a few years before 59 and a half, you got to wait 5 years to take those gains out tax-free, or you just kind of bank on waiting until at least 59 and a half to tap into the gain. But it's important to know that those gains are withdrawn tax-free. One of the big things about Roth TSP also is there's no income limitations for Roth TSP contributions like there are in the outside world with an outside Roth IRA. So 2024, the max overall deferral limit for thrift savings plan is a total of $30,500. So the base or normal TSP contribution amount is $23,000 for this year. And then as long as you're over the age of 50, they let you put in an additional up to $7,500. So the combined total between the two is 30,500. So in theory, you could put all of it into the traditional side, or you could put all of it into the Roth side, but you want to be aware of how taxes would play into Roth contributions as well. So, all righty. So how does a Roth TSP compare to a Roth IRA? So going back to this idea of one of the major things is the income limitations that exist in the Roth IRA world. So in terms of base contribution amount for this year, 2024, with a Roth IRA, you can contribute up to 7,000, and then as long as you're over the age of 50, they let you put in an additional $1,000. So that's a grand total of $8,000 that you can put in annually into just a normal contribution to an outside Roth IRA, which the 30,500 is a significantly higher contribution amount. So important to be aware of that fact as well. And then with outside Roth IRAs, if you start to make a higher and higher amount of adjusted gross income, they start to cut your access off to Roth contributions. So for single filers with an adjusted gross income of 161,000 or more, you can't make contributions to Roth IRAs once you get past that level. And for married filers, if your AGI is above 240,000, they phase out your ability to contribute to an outside Roth IRA. So just knowing some of the key differences between Roth TSP and Roth IRA is important when you're in the planning phase. Moving on to the different fund options. Now having just a general handle on how the different individual funds operate is a very important piece of the pie. So traditionally the two safe funds, or funds that don't have as much variability in the market like stock funds, would be G and F. So G is government securities, it's short-term US treasuries. F is a fixed income fund, so it's investment grade bonds, tracks the Bloomberg Aggregate Bond Index. C fund, at the end of the day, is essentially an S&P 500 index fund. So there's a lot of money invested in the S&P 500 index. It's common stocks is what the C stands for. I is for international, which is weighted towards Europe, Australia, and East Asia. And then S is small, what they define as small cap companies, or small to medium US companies that aren't included in the S&P 500. And then in addition to the individual funds, they have life cycle funds. Last few years, they added a number of new life cycle funds. So now they range all the way from L income, or L 2025, out to L 2065. And just knowing in a general sense how the L funds operate is important as well. So, but we'll touch on L funds here in a second. So L funds are just a mix of equities, the stock funds, bonds, and so it's a mix of GF, CS, and I. The pie chart is adjusted on a quarterly basis. So in a general sense, L 2065 would be considered the fund that has the highest growth potential, but also has a little bit more variability in the marketplace, as opposed to L 2025, which is one of the more conservative funds. So selection for the life cycle funds is based on when you plan to start withdrawals. So like I just said, L 2065 was designed for younger participants. Obviously, it has greater price variability, or greater movement in the marketplace, but there's also more growth potential as well. So important to know in the back of your mind when you're weighing, if you want to use life cycle funds, you just want to pinpoint which fund is right for what you're trying to do. So then the individual funds, you have the option with both of them to decide which funds you want, whether or not you want to use all of them or just a few of them. So that would be worthwhile to just throw in a snapshot of TSP fund returns year to date. So as of the end of April, everything was in the green except for F. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride with bonds or fixed income the last couple of years. So if you got money in F, you just want to keep an eye on that and just keep reading the headlines of where the Federal Reserve is headed with interest rates. But one of the important things to keep in mind about TSP fund options would be the circles that are blue. So I always try to emphasize to folks that you try your best to come to peace with the fact that market volatility, market variability is a fact of life. One of the most important things is putting yourself in a spot where you don't make an emotional decision, or you see your account value go down for a finite window of time, take the money out of equity funds and park it in G, and then get paralyzed trying to figure out when to buy back in. But so C fund has been around since January of 1988. Its average annual return since January of 1988 has been just shy of 11%. Doesn't do 11% every year, but when you average it out over the long haul, that's an interesting number. It's an important number to know. So, and then G fund average annual return since inception has been a little over 4.5%. G fund G fund is the safest fund. It doesn't necessarily blow the socks off of growth to the plus side, but it also doesn't go down in value at the same time. So always important to know. So what are the going back to that conversation about life cycle funds, it's just important to know how they're built. So what's the difference between L2025 and L2065, for instance? So this is a snapshot of the distribution of L2025 as of April of this year. So the red arrow just points out the fact that there's a much larger percentage of the overall pie chart invested in G fund, but that's because the whole idea with L2025 is that you plan to use it for income at that date. So that's why it gets more and more conservative the closer and closer you get versus L2065, which has a much larger proportion of money invested in CS and I. So, all right, distribution options. In a general sense, the main choices that you have when you're thinking about how do I go about tapping into this money. If you're distributing money from TSP, you can go opt for a lump sum payment. When they say lump sum payment, this would be like taking the balance, putting it in your checking account, which you probably don't want to do because if you take a lump sum payment on the traditional side, you got to pay taxes on that lump sum. So sometimes over the years, we've had folks ask questions of whether or not it'd be worthwhile to just cash it out, like pay off their mortgage, for instance. And then you're weighing whether or not the taxes that you would pay to do that in one felt swoop versus strategically investing it and using the income that's spinning off of that pool to pay down a mortgage, for instance. So that's one of the just an idea of some of the brainstorming that takes place when you're weighing what to do in terms of distribution options. You have the option to do a full or partial rollover to traditional Roth IRA. Another option would be monthly payments in a specific dollar amount, which you can adjust on a monthly basis, or fixed annuity option. So fixed annuity option that TSP offers you is it's kind of like the Model T version of an annuity. So they have to have it, but it's definitely not the most competitive annuity option that exists in the marketplace. One thing that's good to know about TSP, if you're in a zone where you can take an unreduced retirement from the federal government prior to age 59 and a half, as long as you hit some key milestones of age and years of service. So for just normal FERS employees, if you retire after age 55 and you got at least 30 years of service under your belt, you can you can take a distribution directly from TSP and not have to worry about paying an additional 10% early withdrawal penalty. When you have the years of service in to retire prior to 59 and a half, it's always a little frustrating because you're still subject to this 59 and a half age that applies to pretty much every retirement savings account out there, like 401k, outside IRAs, TSP. You just have to be particular about how you're tapping into TSP or qualified retirement savings accounts prior to age 59 and a half. So you don't have to worry about paying federal tax. You always have to pay federal and depending on the state, potentially state income tax. But if you don't do it the right way and you tap into TSP funds prior to age 59 and a half, you could potentially pay an additional extra 10%. So sometimes when people are in that spot where they can retire at like 57 and they got 30 plus years of service under their belt, sometimes they'll leave a chunk of money at TSP, roll the rest out, and then use that for monthly income or periodic withdrawals as needed. So they don't have to worry about paying the extra 10%, and they have enough money to get them past age 59 and a half. So just an idea of the planning that takes place depending on when you want to retire, how many years of service you have, what age that you're shooting to retire at. So all right, managing the TSO. A couple of years ago, TSP did a major overhaul where they shifted a lot of things from things that they did with paper forms to pretty much everything with TSP is done via their website now. So at the end of the day, there were a lot of pros to it, but at the same time, you want to be particular about what you're doing in the website because there's a lot of different ways to mix and match withdrawals. So if you don't check the right boxes or click the right buttons, there's potential for things to pan out not necessarily the way that you wanted them to. So the pros are it's more efficient. Things move a little bit quicker. There's not as much human error component involved, but at the same time, everything's done via the website. So there are pros and cons to shifting everything to electronic, which I'm sure you guys are aware of in other aspects of overall life. And so this is just a snapshot of the withdrawal options from. I thought it'd be worthwhile to throw in a snapshot of what it looks like on the TSP website when you're getting to the point of deciding whether or not you want to do an annuity purchase, a partial distribution, total distribution, or installments. So again, just a little snapshot for you of the reference point directly from TSP's website. All right, how do you go about getting a retirement strategy started? So our process usually involves, most of the time, at least 2 or 3 meetings. So first meeting is what we call a fact-finding meeting, where we figure out a time to sit down with you, and we'll send you a list of identifying information to gather, if at all possible. Oftentimes that involves any retirement estimates, leave and earnings statements, just some key pieces of identifying information, because the more accurate we are with the information that you give us, the more accurate we can be with the plan that we put together for you. Second meeting, we put together in a written version, we call it version 1 of your retirement plan, where it just breaks down details and choices for each piece of the pie. So what you want to do for FERS pension in terms of survivor benefits. If you have FEGLI coverage still, there's a choice for what you want to do with FEGLI coverage as a retiree. So you want to know the cards that you're working with in terms of federal employee group life insurance, because once you hit certain milestones of age and years of service, the price tends to go up at a noticeable clip. And we'll give you an idea of figures for FERS supplement or Social Security, and an income strategy for generating income from TSP. One of the more important variables that we throw into the mix, we guys like to run what's called a net monthly income comparison, where we just take your deductions and your gross income from your leave and earnings statement, flip those from biweekly to monthly, and compare those to gross retirement income relative to the deductions that go away as a retiree. So that it's important to remember there's a lot of stuff you pay for when you're working full time that goes away at the point of retirement. So, and then an investment and income strategy for what to do with TSP money. Meetings after that, we finalize the choices that you want to use for each piece. So decide what you want to do with pension, FEGLI, weigh the pros and cons, what to do with the TSP income strategy, finalize the investment and income strategy. And then oftentimes that involves opening traditional IRAs or Roth IRAs, or oftentimes even after-tax brokerage accounts. And then after the point of formal retirement and after the point of implementing the strategy, it's an ongoing review. So life happens, things change, and oftentimes the plan needs to be adjusted. Life after formally retiring from the federal government. So it's an evolving process with people that are clients of ours, even after the formal retirement from the federal government. So what items do I need to track down for that fact-finding meeting? So like you said a second ago, number 1 on the list would be just a recent copy of leave and earnings statement. It always helps if you can track down a copy of a retirement estimate from HR, or just any sort of retirement estimate from Employee Express or MyPay. Just a recent TSP statement so we can get an idea of balance in the funds that you're invested in. And then any other investment accounts that you like to add into the mix, like old 401ks, outside IRAs, accounts that you have earmarked for retirement income, and then detail on any outside life insurance policies, long-term care policies. Social Security statement, if you haven't taken a look at one of those in a while, it's good to periodically just check in and see what Social Security has for you. And then divorce decree, if that's applicable for you. And sometimes people want to add their spouse's benefits into the mix in terms of a comprehensive plan as well. So if you'd like to do that, then just tracking down some identifying information on spouses retirement accounts would be helpful as well. All righty. Any questions, Patty?
There are no questions. David, do you have anything else?
Nothing right now, but thanks for tuning in, everyone. If any questions come to mind, feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email, or you can always just add the question to the comment box on our website. So hope to see you guys in the near future, and hope to have you guys tune in again. So again, thanks for hopping on the call.